Hello, everyone. Welcome to IE Working Together. I'm your host, Paul Granillo, President and CEO of the Inland Empire Economic Partnership. And it's my pleasure to introduce you to Jennifer Hiramoto from the City of Ontario. Jennifer, how you doing?
I am great. I am ready for MLB and baseball. So it's great to be
And
here.
and you look like you're dressed for baseball. A lot of big things going on in Ontario, and we'll talk a little bit about that. But why don't we start by just telling everybody who's watching and listening about yourself and your role as the Executive Director of Economic Development in the City of Ontario.
Well, thank you so much, Paul, for the invitation, and thank you to IEEP. So my name is Jennifer Hiramoto. I'm the Executive Director of Economic Development for the City of Ontario. Our little economic development team here, we're comprised of about 11 people. We're the smallest agency in the City of Ontario, but Ontario itself is nearly a $1.6 billion corporation, and we'll talk a little bit today, I think, about all of the projects that we have going on. But really, within economic development and for the City of Ontario, our role is ultimately to improve the quality of life for the residents here. And we do that through business attraction, retention, investment, and continuing to drive up property values for everybody that lives here. So there's a lot in between that we do, whether it's on the real estate development side, on supporting and attracting new businesses, in working with our airport, which I think we'll talk about. But ultimately, we are just one small agency in a much larger organization over at the City of Ontario.
So, Jennifer, we've got lots of cities in San Bernardino County, lots of cities in Riverside County. Um, I think people appreciate the size of different cities. There has to be competition, though, amongst the cities, right? When you talk about economic development. But you work with a group called CalEd, right? That kind of helps people to work together for us to have a more united voice, right? Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yes. So I've been in economic development almost all of my career in local government. So for the past 20 years. And yes, there's always a little bit of a friendly competition amongst cities. But really, as a state, we are all competing against the rest of the nation to try to keep jobs here, keep businesses here. And ultimately, the high tide rises all. And our strength really comes from working with our partners, not in competition with them. My role on CalEd, it's a volunteer gig, but CalEd is a statewide group. We represent about 1,100 organizations up and down the state, 70% of which are municipalities or county agencies. And together we end up fighting for economic development resources, sharing best practices, and we host a number of trainings as well to help economic developers like myself to understand and be able to utilize all of the latest tools that's available. Some of what we see as far as trends go in economic development. When I first came on the scene, it was right after my first career. I was actually a newspaper reporter. And so I entered economic development right as they eliminated redevelopment. And for anybody that ever has heard of redevelopment, essentially it was a tool within California where it allowed you to capture tax increment financing. So any new um, revenues from property tax, you can capture that in a certain area within your city, and then use that funding to reinvest it back into a certain area, really to help improve the region or your city. So eliminating blight and bringing in new projects. Once the state got rid of that, which would have been back in like 2011, it made it that much harder for cities to revitalize. And as a result, what you saw was the skill set that economic developers had went away from the real estate and finance craft and more toward things like marketing and grant delivery and building up ecosystems, all of which are very important, but it was kind of missing out on that sort of classic redevelopment tool. What you see today is kind of like the pendulum has swung. more and more cities now have started to band together and have told the state that they need resources like that. And that is really one of the advocacy elements that CalEd has stepped into, is ensuring and letting the state know we need those resources. And then secondarily, training economic developers on all of those different resources that are available. But CalEd has been a really great asset, certainly for cities like Ontario, but most definitely for organizations across California. And it also has an emphasis too on our rural communities. I did not know this, and I know San Bernardino and the Inland Empire certainly has its share, but 74% of California's landmass is actually rural communities. And so it's important that we have organizations like CalEd that are also advocating for those very specific needs that the rural communities require. So that's a I think I probably went down a rabbit hole. I just came back from DC on an advocacy trip with CalEd, so I spent a lot of time with them. But we've relied on them quite a bit in Ontario for some of the advocacy work that we do, and trying to advocate for better legislation that will help us ultimately do our jobs in economic development.
So when we use the term economic development, right, and I think you laid it out, um, there is business attraction, right? So everybody would like a Trader Joe's
That's
nearby.
right.
So there's competition. But you can't do that unless there's policy, right? That means politics often, at the city level, maybe the county level, the state level, national. And then there's probably, I guess I want to put it, a sense of community that you have to have. You have to know what your community wants and what it wants to look like. So, what is it that drew you to economic development? What's the story there? And what do you like best about it?
Sure. Well, this is you're saying a lot of the things that I end up talking to folks about economic development, and including my family when they wonder, like, what is it that you do again? But to kind of unpack the first statement that you made, economic development's a very interesting field. And whenever I am out, whether it's at these guest lectures or at doing these different CalEd events, I always ask the room, raise your hand if you ever started your career wanting to be in economic development. And nobody ever raises their hand, right? This is not a field that people naturally think of. Um, but people end up in it. And really, it is a field that requires a whole range of crafts and expertise, whether it's not economics, believe it or not, which we get some interns that kind of stumble in and they think, oh, I have an economics degree, like this is perfect. And I say, well, not exactly. But it's everything from principles of real estate to marketing to just public administration, politics, advocacy, um, and then on contract negotiation. I mentioned marketing, but only because it's very important to what we do. So there's a whole range of skill sets involved in economic development. I ended up, like many, in this field by accident. So I'd mentioned my first career, I was a newspaper reporter. I grew up in the Bay Area. I just like seeing my name in print. It was a very vain calling. So my first job out of San Jose State, I worked at the Los Gatos Weekly Times, small little weekly newspaper. And I remember the first time I was covering a council meeting. It was actually a town council meeting. And one of the issues that they were facing was that they had a new um, revenue generator. And this was back 2006. They were freaked out. They weren't sure if they can count on this revenue generator, this new business in the town of Los Gatos. Do you know who is headquartered in Los Gatos?
No, tell me.
It's Netflix.
Really?
Netflix was headquartered in Los Gatos, and the budget administrator at the time was not sure that that was going to be a consistent revenue stream. And I just remember sitting in that council chambers and thinking, like, this is really fascinating of how communities make decisions about funding. At the time, there was a female city manager, a female assistant city manager. I thought that was interesting too, is at least a career path for women to go into. And so that was like one of the early taste that I had of local um, economic development. Fast forward, I got a daily job here in San Gabriel Valley at the San Gabriel Valley Tribune, where I covered local government, and I loved it. I loved watching the nuances at council meetings, the live theater. I enjoyed the range of stories that I was able to write on. And it was really that time as a reporter that inspired me to go into local government. I got a master's degree from USC. And it just so happens that the town that I was living in, Monrovia, I had interviewed that city manager, Scott Ochoa, for a previous story. And so I hit him up like any young intern would and said, "Do you have any internships?" And he said, "Well, not paid ones." And so I ended up getting my start in local government and economic development in the city of Monrovia as an unpaid intern, working for my first, I guess, my first assignment was doing a downtown strategic plan, which is perfectly an economic development program, and it played well into my reporting skills. And I guess the rest is history. So I, because I could write and I could talk to people, that kind of parlayed itself into more assignments and then a paid internship. And then from Monrovia, I ended up, and you'll pick up on a theme. I ended up working for the same city manager, Scott Ochoa, again in Glendale, and then again in Ontario. So I really appreciate his vision and his ability to execute. But that's how I got my start in economic development. And I've worked on a range of projects, and each community is very different. But at its core, there are a set of tools within your economic development playbook. And the more time I spend in this field, the stronger that playbook and that toolkit has gotten. So that's a little bit about me. Way too long.
No, and what what you did there, I think, is shows the skill set that you have, right? Which is the ability to paint a picture, to tell a story, and I think that's really important if you're trying to get people to invest, right? To make a commitment, and I think that's a lot of what economic developers have that type of skill set. So,
Absolutely. I
well,
mean, the storytelling component of what we do in our field is critical. And I think that was the one of the things I learned while being a reporter is you had to be able to take sometimes very condensed or boring information and be able to package it in a way that people not only understood, but that they care about. You also have to be able to change it up based on who your audience is. So oftentimes in our role in economic development, we have a vision. Let's say the vision is to build a baseball stadium. That means that you need to convince and to get people, you need to get the residents excited. You need to get council on board. You need to get your staff. You need to get attorneys to understand. There's a whole host of people that you need to get excited about this project, and then to also be able to follow so that you get people on board to be able to build and deliver this vision. And you have, you can't just write it out. You have to be able to illustrate it or use social media or take ads out. So the marketing component, that's why I mentioned it, is very important to what we do. But rhetoric is important too. I mean, you've got to be able to sell the vision. And part of selling the vision is you got to be able to believe in it too. If you do not believe in what you're doing or where you're working, then then do not work there or do not pursue the dream of that you're seeking.
right. No, and I think it's really important for the Inland Empire, right? It's important for us to tell our stories and not have other people outside the region define us, right? And I think that's what you and the city of Ontario do so well. So this podcast is about the Inland Empire. It's about how different individuals, different leaders, in different segments are creating jobs and creating communities and really, again, helping the Inland Empire to take its rightful place. 11th largest metropolitan area in the United States, second largest in California. Uh, and we need to tell that story. And we can only tell that story through I think great work that's being done in so many different places. But one of those places is the city of Ontario. So why don't you tell us a little bit about what's going on in Ontario and where you guys have had success?
Yes. So Ontario is an old city, and it's about 125 years old. It has also had very consistent council and leadership who have been at this for, in some instances, 3 decades. And I bring that up because what you're seeing right now in Ontario, we on the staff level are standing on the shoulders of giants. And they have implemented already some pretty um, catalytic projects, whether it was the convention center, the Toyota Arena, being able to regain control of the airport. Those are all big swings that the Ontario City Council took and has made. But we continue to complete the vision and then add on more. So, one of the reasons we've been able to add on more is voters a couple of years ago approved a full cent sales tax that was Measure Q. This unlocked about $60 million in new revenue. And this is revenue that is going directly back into major infrastructure projects. When you drive around Ontario, and it's a large city, it's 50 square miles. When we host developers, we tell them, we should really, and we do, we take them up by air in some cases just so they can really see the lay of the land. But there's a lot of construction that is happening at all corners of the city. And most of this is at the hands of the city, or our partnerships with city and public-private partnerships. So just kind of, I'll work my way north or south, but near the Toyota Arena, for example, this is a 11,000 seat arena, one of the top performing of its size in the nation. We have a agreement with Adept Development. It's in the ground right now. Will be complete in December of this year. But we're delivering 700 new residential units, 70,000 square feet of commercial. This is going to be equivalent to like an LA Live type experience, but right here in the Inland Empire. Um, the other advantage too to that area around the arena is that it does border Rancho Cucamonga. Rancho's taken on some very ambitious projects too, like the Brightline. And you mentioned earlier competition, Paul, but this is certainly the case where the Brightline will benefit the entire region and most certainly Ontario. So a lot of development happening by the arena. If you were to travel just near the airport, you would also see some very large industrial developments that are happening. It's actually led by the airport. This is the Hub project. This is brand new square feet of almost a million plus square feet of industrial. If you were to travel a little bit further south of the 60 freeway, that's where you would see O&T Field. So this is the new minor league baseball stadium. I think you visited recently, so I'll let you
It,
kind of share your experience.
it's great.
Good. We're going around telling people this is the best stadium in the country, and I don't think we're wrong. I mean, this isn't just a selling point. This is truth. What did you
You
think?
are, you are right. It
Okay,
is,
good.
it is beautiful and functional, and I've never seen anything like it.
Good. So it's not as though Ontario is the only city in the world to have ever created a stadium, but really what the play here is the city acquired 200 acres. It was dairy farmed just a year ago or so. And in that 200 acres, 15 of it will be anchored by the professional baseball stadium, home to the Ontario Tower Buzzers. They're the Dodgers affiliate. So we now have that new asset, but surrounding it will be another 120 acres or so of youth sports fields. And this is going to be a major, not just regional draw, but we believe a national draw, especially as there's more and more competition for youth sports. Most certainly, it will be a benefit to our local residents. So that will trail by about 6 months. And then, so that's under construction now. But we still have all this other development opportunity for supporting commercial, office, hospitality. And so that's where I spend a lot of my time right now is working with interested developers to deliver this whole vision of a tourist sports destination right here in the Inland Empire. So those are just three major projects that we're working on. We have our downtown revitalization. Oh, and we're building out an entirely new city in the Ontario Ranch, which makes up about half of Ontario. We annexed this area about 25 years ago. Again, mostly dairy farms. And we're building. We are building single family homes, about 1,200 new single family homes each year. This is also where you see new commercial, new industrial buildings, home to the largest Amazon distribution center in the world at 4 million square feet. And of course, all the amenities that would support it. So that's a grand park, which is underway. That's 300 acres. You have new schools, new fire stations, new roads, new infrastructure. Suffice it to say, there's a lot of construction and development happening all across Ontario.
So that was a great presentation, and I want people to get some of the gold nuggets that were in there, right?
Sure.
One about economic development, right? So let's look at the baseball field, right? It's not just a baseball field. It's a baseball field, yes, that will attract, we'll have a baseball team and baseball fans. But you guys just had a concert there, so it's going to be a concert venue, other applications. And then there's the sports park. One of California's biggest industries, right, is youth sports. Billions of dollars that are spent there. So that, and that, when people come in for tournaments, right, they stay in hotels and they eat at restaurants, right? So I guess what I'm trying to say is in all of these plays that you're talking about, right, they're not just one move, right? It's one move that multiplies, right?
Correct. Yes. And that is really ultimately the big move. And we've seen this in California. And this is why I go back to we're not the only city that has done this, where we have counted on having a professional team, but where we've seen it and we've seen it fall and fail, right? Oakland is the best example of this. I mean, they just lost two professional sports teams. Where we have the opportunity here is you take a major investment, a major public investment like this stadium. You're you're banking on the visitors that you'll get from the baseball, on top of the visitors that you'll see from all the concerts and other events. You add that up with the 1.2 million visitors that we will see from the youth sports fields. You add that up with a hotel that will be developed, a new Marriott brand hotel just adjacent to the stadium. You add that, I mean, all of this, right? You're just, these are ultimately, I mean, they're really multipliers. There are, on top of the new visitors, you're creating new hotel stays. You are increasing the property values for all the neighbors around. You're also adding more amenities too, to all the residents that are there. When you ask them right now where they go to eat, unfortunately, we see that their favorite places to eat are in neighboring cities. And so this is another opportunity to create a new amenity for our residents. And that's always the priority, is first and foremost serving the residents of Ontario, and then serving the region, and then trying to bring in the tourists. And of course, leveraging everything else we have here, like the international airport. So it does seem like we're just starting. We delivered the stadium very quickly. We had to contractually do this by April 2nd, and we did it. But really, we are just beginning. I haven't even mentioned the golf course, Whispering Lakes, which is just north of the stadium as well. That's another important municipal amenity that we have that will stand to benefit, and we'll see some improvements there too. So the way that we are looking at Ontario is there are really opportunities throughout the city, and we are looking at how do we have the most impact now, and where does the government investment, where is that going to help inspire private dollars and private investment? And that's what I think that you'll start seeing more and more, especially around the stadium.
No, that's great. That's great. So what does it take to make that happen? How come we see a city like Ontario? Uh, we've got a lot of old cities, right? With an old center, and then they've built out, but not all of them are as successful as Ontario is. So, what is the secret sauce, and what gets in And why do some of those cities struggle?
Well, I can talk a little bit about what I think the secret sauce is in Ontario, and some of this is from experience and working in a couple of other cities, and some of it is just having the benefit of speaking with peers and watching what's happening in other cities as well. So I think first and foremost, it's really the council. The council makes the biggest difference in a city's ability to succeed or fail. And while I realize that that it might sound a little bit too political, but it's true. When a developer comes in and they know that if they're trying to get a development approved by the city, and that when that project goes before the city council, if there's some opposition from whomever at that city council meeting, a developer needs to know that the council is going to ultimately support that development, and that they're not going to fold when they hear one community member protest that project. So you have consistency in the council. They're very pro development. They're very pro staff. We also, I think, another big advantage is that Ontario has resources. And they've worked very hard on that over the years. It's not just the Measure Q, that sales tax measure, but we have a diverse economy. And so it's everything from Ontario Mills and the sales tax that's able to generate. You have property tax, the Amazons of the world, for example. Those, while certainly the LA Times will try to talk about so many of the negatives that logistics has brought, there are many, many benefits that it has brought to our region. And one of them is it's a consistent property tax generator. So you have property taxes, you have our TOT, our hotel occupancy tax, that's stable. And then, of course, I talked about some of the sales tax and auto dealers, et cetera. So the second component here is that we have resources. I think the third is that we have land. We still have land to build. When you compare that against what you see in LA County, they're doing a lot of second generation uses. Here, you are in some cases you're building on dairy farm, and so that has its own challenges. But at least you have kind of room to imagine. And then I think the fourth component is that you have a strong city leadership, starting with the city manager, and that trickles down all the way to staff. So everyone knows where Ontario wants to be, and city staff is going to do whatever it can to support it. Um, I guess kind of the final important component is that I think this success breeds success. And so when the development community or others who have done business here before, they remember, oh yeah, that was a good experience. I want to go back. On the flip side, if they're dealing with, I don't know, like the city of LA, and they feel that that is a terrible experience, and that it was unpredictable deadlines, and you don't know what the council was going to do, and it took 2 years to pass something. People remember that and they get scarred. So I think that's some of the secret sauce that you are seeing happening in Ontario, and it's all happening right now, it seems.
Yeah. My LA friends, I have to remind them that sometimes it's LA's political choices, whether that's regulation or taxes, that's one of the best economic drivers for the Inland Empire. So you brought up the dairy, and I think it's always important for us to remember our history, right? So you're a Northern California girl, but I've, multi generations in the Inland Empire, right? So the history of the dairies, where the dairies were actually in Long Beach.
Wow.
And then as Long Beach developed, they came inland to Chino and Ontario, what was known as the Dairy Preserve. And then you want to talk a little bit about the name Ontario and the Chafies?
I think,
Or you want
well,
me to?
okay, well, I mean, I know about the Chafee brothers, and they were the original founders here, a pair of engineers from Ontario, California, and they had a vision. I think this would have been in the mid 1800s, late 1800s, but they had a vision for delivering the model colony here in Ontario. And so part of the reason that we have like the historic Euclid Avenue, for example, with the median, it is due to the Chafee brothers. The water lines that we have here are due to the Chafee brothers. So there's a lot of kind of nods, positive nods to the Chafee brothers, and I believe that I will probably get ridiculed if I get this wrong, but I believe that the name was inspired from where they were from in Ontario, Canada.
And Canada.
Yeah.
That's correct, right? And upland is upland of Ontario. So always kind of interesting to look at these things.
Yes.
So you talked a little bit about the Amazon facility. Certainly, you know, the movement of goods is something that has been driven by how we consume goods, right? We don't go to stores anymore like Sears and Kmart. We like to have things delivered. If we order in the morning, the perfect thing is for it to be there when we get home, right? So that's a whole change in how we purchase things. But in order to do that, you got to have a warehouse, right? So can you talk a little bit, most especially, I mean, you have the Amazon facility, the 4 million square foot Amazon facility, but about air cargo and the importance of the airport.
Yes. So Ontario has been very unapologetic about its position when it comes to being a part or even um, a major part of this logistics hub. And that is in most part because of the Ontario International Airport. This is one of the fastest growing airports in the country with a very, very top and increasing cargo generation as part of the airport. We continue to see it expand as well. We have the on-site facilities with FedEx and UPS. Amazon is there as well. And we are very supportive of logistics. When you look, there's probably about 200 logistics adjacent businesses that are here in Ontario. We have all of the large distribution centers here. We have 2 Home Depots, the Amazon that I mentioned, Lululemon. There really is a very large list that goes on and on. And I think part of our position in Ontario is almost on the defense, it seems, when it comes to defending our position in leaning into this. These are major job generators, and I think that's been one of the misconceptions out there. The Amazon facility, as an example, yes, it is highly automated, but there's also 2,000 employees that work out of that facility. And so if anything, it appears that as the distribution centers become more and more automated, it's actually increasing the skill set that is required to work in those facilities, thereby decreasing some of the need for kind of the lower level skill sets. And so that's actually good news because that means that you are going to have higher wage jobs at these facilities versus jobs that can in fact be taken over by some of the automation. So we see this story happening throughout the region, and we continue to see more and more industrial development, especially in whether it's adjacent to the airport as well as still in South Ontario. But I do want to just make the point that if you were to fly over Ontario, I think you would see that, yes, there are a lot of industrial facilities, a lot of large industrial facilities, but we've also master planned this community. And so it's not neighborhoods living right next door to the distribution centers. We've been very intentional in creating a separation so that, again, we are creating a better quality of life for everybody that lives here.
Yeah. No, I think the importance of the supply chain is something that is important to the nation's economy, important to the state economy. And if we were to, again, go down a historical route, right, the forerunners of the San Manuel tribe were trading with native tribes at the beach, right along what we consider the 10 corridor. The 15 corridor has always been a place for the movement of people and goods, and Ontario sits literally, right at the crossroads of that. So we're the 11th largest MSA, metropolitan statistical area. Um, If you look at the ones above us, Phoenix, Philadelphia, obviously, New York number one, LA number two, all of them have a major city that defines them, right? Um, Riverside wants to claim that they're the capital of the Inland Empire, Rancho. Why can Ontario claim that title?
Well, I mean, we do have a development that we're going to unveil, and it's part of the Adept development, and it's called Capital City. And so they can
All right, we're breaking news here. I like it.
yes, yeah. So that will be a new concept that you will see soon. Again, I actually think to go back to my previous statement, the high tide rises all. I think it's wonderful that Riverside is making this claim, and Rancho and Ontario. I actually think our true competitors are nobody within the IE. I mean, really, I feel like it's still this region against LA County, this region against Orange County, this region against it seems like the state at times. I mean, there's still so many negative misconceptions about the Inland Empire. And what I what I think people don't fully realize is that this region is really the unicorn of the state. It's the future of the state. We're producing housing, we are producing jobs, we are investing in infrastructure. There's room to grow. So when you counter that against what's happening, like in LA County, for example, where it's almost like the sun is setting, right? If you go and enjoy some of those events, if you go to I don't know, the theater out there, or you drive to anywhere in downtown LA, it's difficult. The parking's expensive. It can feel unsafe. The traffic is unbearable at times. And suddenly you have places like Rancho and Riverside in Ontario that are creating fun and easy family-friendly environments for you to experience. And I mean, people have a choice of where they want to go. If they live in the San Gabriel Valley and they don't want to deal with the traffic in LA, and suddenly they realize, oh, Riverside has this cool thing, or Ontario has this cool thing, well, they're going to choose the Inland Empire all day long. So I like knowing that there's other development that's happening around the Inland Empire. I'm
Yeah,
okay
no,
with, multiple capitals as long as it's the Inland Empire.
that was a very good political answer, and
Yeah.
I will give Riverside and Rancho their equal time.
Okay. I
To answer
expect
the
they'll
question.
return the favor.
I'm sure they will. So the state has a housing crisis. How is the city of Ontario dealing with that?
Well, just to kind of piggyback on what I just said. So in Ontario, we have Ontario Ranch. So that's the area south of the 60 freeway, generally the former dairy farm. We are through a consortium of builders, building about 1,200 new single family homes each year. Now, these are the same builders that you would see out in Orange County. This is Lennar, Shea, Lewis. There's a whole long list of developers. But so those homes are being developed as we speak. But another trend that you would see, I guess I'll back up one. We have everything from market rate to affordable housing and a lot of stuff in between that's happening all at once. So the market rate single family homes, those are being delivered in Ontario Ranch. When it comes to apartments, Ontario is also delivering those too. We're also upzoning, and that's one of the things that you don't see in all communities. And I think that goes back to sometimes maybe city councils are afraid of how communities will respond. But one example of this is there was a former Kmart. It was 13 acres. Kmart's have come and gone now, and there was a developer that came forward. He ended up buying the property, Legacy Development. Their vision for it was to do about 350 new units with ground floor commercial. The council went ahead and they upzoned it. Before that, it was just zoned for basic commercial. It sounds like a small little administrative change, but really that ends up making a big impact. And so we see examples of that, and some of the larger scale apartments as well. When it comes to affordable housing, Ontario is very progressive on that front too. We are also leveraging some of the other investments that we see in Ontario, like there's a center running bus line that is under construction now. This is through the San Bernardino County Transportation Authority. They are essentially putting a center bus in the middle of Holt Boulevard, and they are pushing out the sidewalk on either side to make way for that. What that actually does is it creates a new opportunity for transit-oriented development. And so we've seen now there's a second phase underway for an affordable housing development in coordination with National Core. So we probably have, with that project and a few others, about 400 other affordable housing developments in the pipeline right now. Um, and there's more too that we've been aggressively seeking. So delivering affordable housing can be tricky just because you're layering so many different state and federal dollars on top of one another, and that can take time. But in the meanwhile, the private community, the private development community remains very bullish on Ontario, and so that's part of what you're seeing throughout throughout the city.
Okay, let's go back to the tower buzzers.
Yes.
But let's use it to tell an economic development story, right? How does this happen? How did the sausage get made?
Oh,
So
okay.
tell us about, where the idea started, and then how does it get to the city council, and then what's the interaction between the city council and the economic development office? Let's use
Sure.
that as an example.
Well, so this, when you ask our city council, they will tell you that they have been after a professional sports team for many, many years, actually for decades. And so we have, this is really just part of delivering on that dream. But it started, I would say, about 3 years ago. And our city manager, Scott Ochoa, longtime Dodger fan, longtime baseball fan, we had a meeting with the group that was the Quakes, that the operational folks out of the Quakes. At the time, it was Brett Sports, and we just said, hey, if it was not a poaching conversation, for the record, we've had this conversation with Rancho, but it was, hey, if the city were to go about attracting a minor league team in Ontario, how would they do that? So that was the origin story of that conversation. We did not know that at the time there were a couple things happening, and one of them was within minor league baseball. That there is this effort to bring up all of the stadiums to these professional development league standards. So that means stadiums had to have things like more women's locker rooms because you see more women trainers and umpires, for example. Those are just one of the requirements that they were making of these stadiums. That translates into real dollars and cents for cities who are oftentimes the operators and owners of these stadiums. And so what we did not realize was that there was still some conversation happening with the city of Rancho and Brett Sports about whether the city was going to be able to upgrade its stadium to accommodate these new requirements. So after that, that kind of put into motion our negotiations with the team or with Brett Sports. But there were a few things along the way that happened. And so one of them was we had to buy land if we were to deliver a stadium. Not only did we have the idea, though, for the stadium, but that's where we also had this idea for the larger youth sports complex. We also had to negotiate with the team, get the team on board. And then from there, we had to build a stadium, and you had to figure out how to deliver all the infrastructure and clear CEQA and go through and finance all of this by a time frame. And we found out that time frame was April 2nd, 2026. One of the curveballs, though, that we were thrown during that time, so we had negotiated the contract with the team. We learned in December of 2024 that the group that we were negotiating with, Brett Sports, actually sold their team and a couple others in their portfolio to a new operator, Baseball Holdings. Now, DBH, they operate and own just under 50 minor league baseball teams throughout the country. And what we also learned during that shuffle, and it's it's definitely a shuffle, but it all impacts us in the Inland Empire, was that the Modesto Nuts were not going to move forward and upgrade their stadium. And so what that meant was the Modesto Nuts, as the Mariners affiliate, was going to move down to the Inland Empire. And so the Inland Empire, which had the Angels affiliate, they were then going to move that team over to Rancho. And then the Dodger affiliate was going to move over to Ontario. And so now you have this really cool thing where you truly have like a freeway series right in town with the Angels affiliate now at the who will be the Quakes, right? At the Quake Stadium, the epicenter in Rancho. And now you have the Tower Buzzers here in Ontario. And it just so happens that the Dodgers managed to win the World Series. So we're all
Twice.
preparing. I know. How do we do that?
And I will just, people will be surprised at what they're going to see and the level of entertaining that can be done at this stadium. It's really well done. I think it's safe to say that you've invested yourself in the Inland Empire. You know the ecosystem, the players, the issues, right? As an Inland Empire leader, what do you think we need to do better? Where do we need to cooperate more? How do we tell our story so that employers are going to invest in us? What would you do if you could just, make it happen?
Well, I think a couple of things. First, I would continue to emphasize that we have a high quality of life here, that we have amenities. We have some of our favorite amenities that have been here for years. We have new ones that are being introduced to our market, and those are what will attract more and more people, more visitors here, but also for our residents. So we need to make sure that those amenities, whether it's the new soccer stadium that the city of Riverside is working on developing, or the new baseball stadium here in Ontario, those are all important quality of life factors that matter to people, and it's a great experience. And so we need to make sure that we're supporting those as residents and businesses, and that we tell the story that this is a good thing to have. I think the second thing, when it comes down to job production, I'm hopeful that with all of the new housing production, especially the new single family homes, you're going to see a shift. You'll start to see higher median household incomes. And hopefully you'll have people who can start making decisions about where they put headquarter companies. Right now, if you drive, if you're driving west to work every day, I'm sorry for that terrible traffic. If you're driving east, you're looking at those folks and you think, oh my gosh, that is a tough commute. And so if there's any way that we as a region can continue to bring in higher quality jobs, whether that's through healthcare, which is I know that's been a priority for you, Paul, whether it's through trying to figure out how do we get more manufacturing here, especially to support our logistics sectors. Or maybe there's other emerging opportunities that we just have not leaned into. But I still think there's a lot more that needs to be done on that front. And maybe it's even getting satellite university campuses out here and making sure that we can retain some of the talent. So I would say that it would be those two things, and then continuing to tell the great story of everything that we're doing here. We don't have to be so combative when it comes to trying to defend our position and why we've done what we've done. I think we can just go on what we're doing. It's pretty amazing. Why aren't you guys here? So
Right.
that's
No,
it.
I think that's wonderful. Well, very well said. Okay, I think we're going to title this "Demystifying Economic Development and the Story of the Tower Buzzers." Right,
That's right.
Jennifer, you've been great. So I'll give you the last word on the city of Ontario.
If you've not been to Ontario in a minute, you need to come and visit us at the very least. Seeing is believing. This ONT field is phenomenal, and you will be wowed. And I cannot wait to see you at a game.
All right, Jennifer, thank you so much. Um, everybody watching and listening, thank you. I hope you are as entertained and informed by this conversation with Jennifer as I have been. And we'll see you on the next episode. Take care.